I got the loader back in the shop here, and we're gonna do the 1,000-hour service. I've actually already done a fair bit of it, but it's the same thing that you do in the 500-hour service. So I've already changed the fuel filter, oil filter, pilot line filter underneath here, and drain the oil. And I've already drained the oil and filled it back up actually. So I was gonna try to film more of the process today, but it's rained all day, and you can tell that Dad's guys were here and they were trying to kind of clean shop and organize. So they had the radio on and there was a lot of noise going on, but I've not done anything more or different than what I have like in the 250-hour or 500-hour service. So in the 1,000-hour, you change all that I just said, but you also change the in-tank hydraulic filter and you drain the hydraulic tank. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. So this is the only part that's basically different or added to, which I've already started. I got to take the radiator out because the big deal is right over here. That's what they call the suction strainer. It's basically just a screen or whatever like that pulls the hydraulic fluid out of the bottom of the tank and sends it to the pump. And there's just a kind of a mesh screen and stuff on there that they want you to check and clean every 1,000 hours, just to make sure there's not any metal shavings or anything like that in there. So yeah, the process to do that, you have to remove the radiator, which like I said, I've already got it. It's the radiator and the hydraulic coolers all in one. So I've already undone the hydraulic lines, and I've taken the upper and lower radiator hose. And yeah, I've made a huge mess because I don't have a big enough drain pan, and then when that one came loose, I bumped it and it ran out. So yeah. And then I have noticed this mount right here is busted, so I've ordered a new one of those. But anyway, in order to get to that deal over here, you take the radiator out and the fan shroud, which I've noticed it looks like I've got a little bit of an oil leak over here. I noticed that when I dropped the pans too. So I need to kind of clean that up and see if I can figure out, it may be the oil pan gasket, which if that's the case, it looks like a real pain to fix that. Check that up, clean it up. Like I said, all the belly pans are off. They're laying over there. Because once I'm done, I'm gonna take this over next door to that friend of mine's shop and power wash it inside and out because it is filthy. And I've already changed, that's where the in-tank hydraulic filter goes, which is this guy right here. And I've already changed that out. So like I said, this is the only part that's kind of different, but you loosen those two up, take the upper and lower radiator hose off and the overflow, and then you can't really see, but you got these two pins right there. You pop those out and then that whole radiator comes out. Then you got four, I think they may be maybe 17s to take that. There's two of them here and two on the other side. We can pop that fan shroud and stuff like that out, and then we can get to the suction strainer piece on there. I want to say there's 5 or 6 17mm bolts in that. And that's the worst part about it is, I mean, it takes you just a few minutes to clean it out, but it's one of those things that, I don't know, I just get nervous about, like, not checking it, because usually I do this 1,000-hour service once a year. This is the biggest part that takes the longer time on the 1,000-hour service. If you didn't have to clean that suction strainer, you could just drain the fluid, because you can see I got it, my deal kind of leaked, but there's just a plug underneath here, because on this one, that's the whole hydraulic tank, is everything inside there, and I want to say it's 16 or 18 gallons what it holds. Set the camera down, we'll pop those two pins out, and I'll set the radiator off to the side, and I'll show you what it takes to get that suction strainer out of there. Okay, there's just a little clip in the bottom of that pin, and I tried to anti-seize these before, but I think we got dirt and junk in there, so don't have enough Okay, I need to do a little cleaning with some emery cloth on these, I guess. Because normally those slide in there pretty good, but not having them out for a year was a little tricky. Alright, now that's out of the way. I got, like I said, the two 17 millimeters there, and then there's one on each backside of here. I'm also going to check the belts while I got the shroud off, and then yeah, this thing, I'm going to get a new hose. That just goes down like for the, to drain it and stuff, but it didn't come off very well. It's been on there a little while. But yeah, now I can just kind of pop that out, and you can get to everything a lot easier. So while I got all that out, I might as well check the belts and see if any other hoses or anything need to be replaced. All right, I got the shroud out, and now we can get to the, looks like it's just 5 bolts in this suction strainer deal right here, but you take those out, and like I said, I can just kind of pry it over and get that suction screen out of there and clean it. I'll probably just call it a night for now. It's getting pretty late. That way I don't have that thing out. That way in the morning I can pop it out and take it across the street and put it in the parts washer, clean it all up. And then basically you just throw that back together and put all this back on. But I want to spend a little time trying to figure out and kind of cleaning up that oil spot and see if I can see maybe where it's seeping out. I'll take some brake clean or something like that and spray all over there and see how I can scrub it off. But yeah, there's just not really a good way to stick my head down in there. I don't know if I may have to pull the alternator off where I can see better, but yeah, we'll do that in the morning. We'll kind of investigate that, clean that strainer out, and then start putting this thing back together. All right, we're back on this. So it's been a couple days since I've left it off, and got the suction strainer cleaned out. I didn't get any of that on video. This is kind of the bad part about sharing a shop. So it's been raining since last Thursday, so I haven't actually worked or anything. And my dad and his guys were in here cleaning up shop, working on stuff at the same time. So they had the radio on and making a bunch of noise. So I didn't get a chance to do a lot of filming. And then I figured out, I think it was Saturday or Monday. It's been too long now. Today's Thursday. What the oil leak was on the loader, which it actually, we'll put the light in there in a minute, but the dipstick tube goes down into this little short piece that goes right into the block, and the tube is actually moved and worn a hole in it, and that's what's puking oil out. So I had to call Monday and get that ordered, which got my workbench over here. The new dipstick showed up, but the piece that this goes into that was supposed to come with it did not. So that is supposed to be here any time now. So while I've had this thing down, I've went ahead and changed both the fan belts again. The AC one looked pretty good. This one just had a little bit of wear on this one side, but it's been kind of squeaking and making noise. I scraped a little bit of this mud out. I've cleaned the pins up that go when I put the radiator back in, so now they'll drop in there easy. Oh yeah, I broke the bolt on this is the deal. That's what I was getting ready to work on right here. This is what tensions the belt on the AC compressor. That goes down there, and then this bolt, you tighten that up. It's hard to do one-handed. because this pulley goes just like that on there, and as you tighten or loosen that bolt up, it moves that, so that pulley will actually set up here. So when you tighten it up, it pushes it over and puts tension on that belt, but I ended up breaking the head of that bolt off, so that's why that's not back on. I'm going to go ahead and replace that. We're going to go ahead and get the dipstick tube and that little piece out. I don't know how well it's showing up, but anyway, that's what it's doing right there. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to get a bolt. We're going to get a bolt and take the dipstick tube out, run a bolt down. That's what the mechanic little trick he taught me or showed me. We'll try to thread a bolt down in there and then just take some pry bars and pop that thing out. And then I guess you just drive the new one in there. So it's kind of a weird design. I don't know if that O-ring on the dipstick tube, I don't know why it started moving or wearing out, but I guess after 8,300 hours of vibrating, it wore a hole in there. I got my new radiator bracket on there, so now that's all nice and tight. Blow that thing out though, but yeah, that's what we're working on for now. So like I said, I know this video hasn't been great, and I'll put the pictures up of the suction strainer, but basically, yeah, you just take these 5 17mm bolts out, and then I think it may be like an 8mm Allen. You pop that out, and there's there's an O-ring behind this plate, and then an O-ring where that puts up on the suction strainer. But the tank was clean, the filter or the strainer was clean, but I just I don't know, I feel better after 1,000 hours, and renting a couple different attachments. This thing takes 1030 motor oil for the hydraulics, so it's hard to say if those other attachments take the same thing or not. So plus, you got a peace of mind knowing that you took it apart and there was no metal or anything like that inside the tank. It is a pain, but really only got to do it once a year. So that's back together, and then as soon as I get this piece fixed, we can throw the radiator in, and she's just ready to go back together. So I will try to get a little more of that filmed, and we'll see how difficult this is going to be to take this dipstick tube out. But yeah, I would encourage anyone else that's got a TL250 to kind of keep an eye on that and see. I don't know if the 230s and the 240s are the same or not, but it's something new that I haven't ever seen before. But like I said, it took a while. That's a lot of years and hours of running and moving around. So all right, we'll get the light in there, pop that thing out, and see what we can get done. I'm sure it's hard to see, but I can't reach my hand back there all the way, but that is the piece. It's got a hole completely through it. I'm gonna try to run a bolt down in and see if we can't pry out of there. So I'm gonna find me a bolt. I can kind of thread down in there and then figure out some way to get a pry bar in there to see if I can pry that thing out. So I've got my new little part. This is a little piece that drives in the block, and there was a hole right there in that there was a hole right there in that side. So now I just got to drive it down, and we'll put the dipstick tube back in, and then I think we're just ready to put the radiator back in, hook all that up, and then fill it up with fluid, and then run it next door and wash it inside and out. So I got all the belly pans off of it, where I can get in here and get the rest of this dirt and junk that accumulates over the year kind of washed out of here and such. So yeah, it'd be nice to have this thing back together, and really shouldn't be too bad. So well, let's get to it. Now I got it driven in there. It's maybe, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch or less from where that bevel is, but I'm starting to kind of bend that top. I ended up having to use a socket and an extension to get in there, or I'd get that hammer because the block of wood wasn't doing it. So I'm hoping that won't be an issue with that smash, because now the new dipstick tube slides down in there, and it's actually got an O-ring on that. I'm going to slap a little silicone on it and slide it down in there. Because I guess what happens is this thing must, over time, just, it's probably when it's idled down, it just vibrates and moves a little bit, and then it wears that hole in there. So we'll put a little silicone on it, and then it bolts up to the side of the block, I think right up there, and holds it. So I don't want to keep trying to drive that down. It's not going to come out and bend that thing anymore. So we should be good, hopefully. I'll keep an eye on it, but now we'll get this in. Okay, got the radiator flushed out. It's back in. Really wasn't too bad. I took some emery cloth and kind of cleaned up these pins and then cleaned out the holes with some brake clean. So they drop right down in there, and got those in. Now I will put the radiator hoses back on, which I've got two new. There's a hose that goes from here to here. I got a new one of those, and then from the overflow, it goes up, yeah, on the end of there. So I've got new ones of those to put on. So basically, yeah, I just got to hook the radiator back up, and then the two hydraulic lines, which go back here to the hydraulic cooler, and then I'll be ready to I guess I've got I may have oil. I'll have to check. I may have to fill it back up with oil and the hydraulic fluid and then antifreeze, and then I'll there's a screw on the tandem pump that you bust loose, what it says in the book, just to kind of bleed the air out of the system. And then there's a little cycle where you, I have to look at the book again, but you, what is it? I think it's a half throttle. You raise and lower the arms and curl and dump the bucket like 5 or 10 times, and then you do full throttle after it warms up 5 or 10 times and let it back down, recheck it, and then possibly it kind of works the rest of the air and stuff like that out of it. And then I usually take it out and drive it around the parking lot, and you'll be able to tell kind of going forward or back. They'll have just a slight hesitation. I'll flip the cab up again and bust it loose on that bolt, and they'll bleed out just a little bit more air. And then once that hesitation's gone, you'll know you got all the air and stuff out of it. And then yeah, then I guess it's just over to the wash bay to clean this thing up. I was actually getting ahead of myself here. I was going to start putting these hoses back on, but I need to put the fan shroud back in, so we'll do that next. And then I'll still run it for a little bit. I do need to run it for a while, and then I'll check the adjustment on these belts. But it's a little more of a pain, but you're still able to get in there even with the shroud on. I'll just have to swing the radiator open to adjust those. But yeah, let's put the shroud in here first before we start hooking all these up, when you can't keep the radiator open as far. But it didn't take 2 seconds to throw it in here and get that bolted back in. Parts just kind of getting it lined under the fan, really. Man down. A real good spot to put my light. What am I hanging up? It's the one thing I kind of hate about working on something and then like taking a week off and coming back and work on it. You kind of gotta remember where you left off sometimes. Okay, I'm gonna have to move the camera so I can lean in there to get these other 2 bolts. We got everything put back together, filled up, tightened up. I got the hydraulic level. It's a little over the halfway mark, but I'm sure it'll go down a little bit again when I start it up. Fire it up, like I said, let it warm back up, and then I'll track across the shop lot out here a couple times. I'll kick it into high speed and go through all that. I may have to bleed that screw one or two more times. It seems like sometimes it'll work some of the air out of there, because you'll be able to tell when I take off, or I go forward and back, when I stop and take off the next direction. Sometimes it'll have a little bit of like a hesitation to it, so if you can bleed that screw off one more time, that'll kind of get rid of that. But after we do that, the big thing is taking it across the street and washing it, because it is a mess. So I've still got all the plates and stuff off the bottom, so I'm going to get in here and flip the cab up and wash the inside of it out real good, and then get the outside of it all scrubbed down and cleaned up, because yeah, it's in dire need of a good wash. But then we'll clean the inside out, and then this thing will be good to go for another 250 hours, and then it'll just be the oil filter and oil and an outer air filter. I change it every 250 hours, and then every 1,000 hours you change the inner filter out. So be pretty easy on the next go around. And the 500-hour service will be a few more of the filters, and then yeah, another 1,000 hours we'll do this all over again. And this is just on the 250s. I believe I needed to look. I think that R2 I had, the suction strainer is much easier. It's not back here, so I think the hydraulic tank's up underneath your feet, so I wish I would have looked into that a little bit more. I know it's not on the sides, so you have to take the radiator out because there's nothing over here on the sides. The machine's wider and there's nothing in those pockets or anything like that. So like I said, this is a 2011 model, so they've changed that and made it even easier to clean that suction strainer and stuff like that out. And I want to say they actually may go a little bit longer intervals between having to do that on the newer machines. With this thing warm up, throw the bucket back on, so I got to do a little touching up in Michael's parking lot over there, and then we'll get this thing cleaned up, so I'll be ready to go back out in the mud for a couple more 100 hours. All right, now I'm just kind of checking back over, let everything kind of drain out and dry out last night and see how it's looking. But see if I can get down here where you can, but now you can actually see the bottom of the floor pan. So got all the dirt. There's a little bit of dirt and junk down in there, but nothing like what it was. So still a little muddy on the motor from everything splashing up, but yeah, all that stuff right there was just packed in the sides and then kind of even down in there. But yeah, I'm happy with that. I didn't get it cleaned up as good as I wanted. Their burner was acting up yesterday, so I didn't have any hot water, so it left a lot of the grease. But yeah, I got all that done and back together, and my next job is to sweep the floor up, because this is all the dirt and junk that I got out of there when I took the plates off and dug out with my hand and stuff before I went and washed it. This is definitely one thing I recommend doing. I try to do it at least twice a year. I probably should do it a little bit more, but at least once a year you need to go in there and just pull your plates off, and then just take a power washer and just wash out everything that you can, so you don't have a bunch of dirt build up and stuff like that where it causes any problems. But it doesn't take any time at all to drop those plates, and then you just flip the cab up and stick the washer in there. I kind of tilt the bucket down and let it run out. But yeah, these machines, I mean, they, especially tracking back and forth, and then in the summertime with the dirt being dry and dusty, it just gets in any and every crevice that you can possibly imagine. So like mine, which there's a lot of grease that's down in there, but it's not near as bad as like the vertical lift machines. As you can see, it's mostly nasty grease and junk like that. But that goes all the way to the battery and stuff like that. But periodically take those plates off, tilt the bucket up, and then just wash it out. I mean, if it's dry, you can kind of take an air hose and kind of keep it blown out through the year. But usually when I do my 1,000-hour service, and sometimes I do the 500-hour, I'll just try to drop those two big plates where I can really get in there and get that stuff cleaned out. Because like down in here, you get a lot of dirt around some of those hydraulic lines, and especially in the summertime when it's like, 100 degrees plus, it just like insulates those lines, which they create a lot of heat as it is. So then when you got dirt around them, that heat can't escape. So then you can pop a hydraulic hose pretty easy. So it's just a good deal to kind of get it all washed out and cleaned out as best as you can. But I gotta clean those plates off over there, throw them back on, bolt the cab down. I'm gonna go ahead and detail the inside of it, and I think I need to check the tension on this. This track looks a little bit loose. I don't think I've got everything done for this round. Get this shop cleaned up, and then I'm gonna pull my brush cutter I got in and start taking that thing apart and see about replacing those bearings and that, because I'm gonna need it pretty quick. So that's kind of what we got going on for today. Just more shop stuff, just so we can get ready to roll for the next week.